What up, cucks? It's your boy, the hater. One of my fans, wrote a comment on one of my videos saying, please make a video about Okada. Sorry, I don't remember who you are, but I think it was in one of the last few videos that I did this, right? Or that you did this, I should say. So I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And then in another video, someone else said, Okada got a $14 million deal. Now, this piqued my interest, so I went and I Googled it. Now, it's disputed, right? They say it's far less, but that he still got a substantial amount of money. But $14 million is nothing to scoff at for 3 years. Let's just say that Okada got a $5 million deal. That already is too much for Okada, and it's probably closer to 14 than it is to 5. It might be like 11, it might be, I don't know. It's got to be at least 10, it feels like, right? Because you're not going to over-report by 4 million. Nevertheless, let's stick with the figure that we know, 14 million. Okada, also known as Okado from TNA, Okado is not worth the money. It's really that simple. With $14 million, you could probably get Shawn Michaels to come out of retirement. With $14 million, you could do a lot of things if you're AEW. You invest in Okada, this is a waste. So, what happens? Okada comes out. Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson, I haven't been watching that much, I guess. I mean, I watched Dynamite. I think I follow Dynamite pretty well, but maybe this is happening in Collision. The Young Cucks are now, I don't know if they're still the Young Bucks, but now they're not Nick and Matt Jackson. They're Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. Okay, interesting. You know what I mean? Give them some credit. Give them some character if there is any character there. But it appears that their gimmick is that they're now like, they've gotten in over their heads and as EVPs. They fired Kenny Omega, obviously, because that's going to set up the big Kenny Omega return eventually. And they've essentially fired Hangman Adam Page, which nobody really cares about. They fired them from the Elite. They haven't fired them from the company, as far as I could tell, right? Then Eddie Kingston comes out. I don't know why. I'm sure there is a reason. And he starts trying to beat up the Young Bucks. They low blow him. They're about to beat his ass. And then the music hits of the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada. Kazuchika Okada comes out. And, you know, you think he's going to save Eddie Kingston, but he doesn't. He grabs Eddie Kingston, right, from behind, right? They kind of botched the grab. Eddie Kingston has to wait there like an idiot for Okada to find his arm. That's how good Okada is. He has to find his arm. Eddie Kingston's just looking. He's just waiting to be spun around, to be hit with that weak-ass clothesline finisher, right? And then he does, and Okada hits him with it. And Okada has now joined the Young Bucks, and he is part of the Elite. Fantastic. Where is this going to lead? Obviously to Okada versus Kenny Omega for the 19th time. Now, is this something to look forward to? I mean, from the perspective of the neckbeard, I'm sure it is. But let's be real. Do you think Okada is going to move the needle at all? Do you think that there is one Okada fan, right? Like, let me put it to you this way. Do you think there's anyone in this world that owns an Okada poster that's not in Japan, right? That doesn't already watch AEW? This will have zero impact on people watching Dynamite or Collision. Zero. All the Okada fans are represented in the 700,000 viewers that AEW gets. Okada does not have 700,000 fans. Okada has like 20, 30,000 fans. Most people don't care about him, and most people don't know who he is. Now, can Okada wrestle? In my opinion, he's not a great wrestler. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that he can't do the moves. He can do the moves. But he is very similar to Gunther in that he has these boring-ass moves. Like Okada does like an elbow drop, he does a flapjack, he does a drop kick, and he does a weak-ass clothesline finisher coming from a skinny, fat guy. So, I'm not exactly like sure why this is happening, but in my opinion, let's just again stick to the figure of $14 million. $14 million is too much for Okada because Okada is not worth that. You could have given him $500,000 a year, $1.5 million total, and that's that. I mean, alternatively, he could have gone to AEW. I mean, to WWE, right? Or I should say NXT, where he belongs. Now, what evidence do we have that Okada is going to be treated any differently than all the other big signings that AEW got, right? Oh, Jay White was pursued by WWE, but he chose AEW. Fantastic. And how's that working out for him? A pre-show match with another 11 guys. That's where he belongs. In AEW, he is on the pre-show in a 12-man, like 7-minute match where he's not the most important guy in any capacity. On the other hand, if he were in NXT, he could at least be feuding with, I don't know, Andre Chase. Who cares, right? He'd probably have a one-on-one segment, and they'd probably push him for the title because at the end of the day, they don't have anybody there that's ever going to make it in NXT, except for, I guess if you count Braun Breaker, which I don't anymore. Like, you really think Tony D'Angelo is going to be like a real world champion? You think Ilya Dragunov is ever going to main event WrestleMania? Absolutely not. There's nobody right now in NXT that's ever going to main event WrestleMania. It's a complete waste of a generation of talent. Not that Jay White would have, but he would have probably stood out when compared to people like Obafemi. You know what I mean? He's more entertaining than Obafemi, I would hope, right? And Okada, too. Okada could have stood out just because he's Japanese, and they could give him that nice little Japanese guy push, but it wasn't going to lead to anything. Likewise, in my opinion, it's not going to lead to much in AEW. Now, they're paying him a lot of money, so he will become, more likely than not, he will become AEW champion and feud with Kenny Omega over the AEW title. That's very likely. But so what? You know what I mean? It's not going to make any difference whether he's champion or if, like, I don't know, Konosuke Take a Shit is champion, right? It took me so long to even realize there's a joke built into the guy's name. His name is Konosuke Takeshita, but it really is Konosuke Take a Shit. You know what I'm saying? So Konosuke Take a Shit and Kazuchika Okada from TNA, right? These guys are going to be pegged as some sort of future stars. And maybe they have a potential. Like, I personally like Take a Shit more than I like Okada, but the truth is, neither of them have what it takes. Obviously, the number one guy from New Japan was Nakamura. He was the only one from New Japan that you could see being a world champion in WWE because he was massively over in New Japan, and nobody is massively over in New Japan because New Japan doesn't really have an audience that cares. So, oh, but hater, it's a cultural difference. No, it isn't. Have you ever been to Tokyo? Well, I have, cucks. And nobody cared about Okada then, and nobody cares about Okada now in Tokyo either. You know, when it's funny that nobody cheers for Konosuke Take a Shit and Kazuchika Okada in New Japan. But when Randy Orton and John Cena come for Raw, the Japanese people lose their fucking minds. They will lose their mind over Tajiri, right? But they don't care about Konosuke to Take a Shit, right? Why? Because they understand that their product is shit. They go there, they pay like 50 yen, which is the equivalent of like $5 to go watch that like indie nonsense, right? And then they don't care. Then they pay hundreds of dollars, probably thousands of dollars for the Japan shows to go watch Raw, and they see something and they react, they lose their minds. The women are losing it over Randy Orton. The men are losing it over everybody else. The men are losing it over, like, you know, back in the day, like the Trish Stratuses and stuff. I don't think anybody's losing it over, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, dude, like, fucking who sucks now? I don't even know, man. Nobody's losing it over Charlotte Flair or Rhea Ripley, you know, who are presented as just these workhorses. But the point stands, right? Okada has no business getting paid this much. He hasn't earned it, and in my opinion, it will just be a bad investment. It's not going to pay the dividends that they think it'll pay. But I will give them credit where credit is due. Some of these guys, like Jay White and Okada and Konosuke Take a Shit, you have to get them before WWE gets their claws on them and corrupts them. Because once WWE does that, then the person is labeled a jobber. WWE releases them, and then you have to convince the fans that Swerve Strickland actually is good, but WWE didn't know how to handle him, right? When in reality, Swerve Strickland is nothing special at all, right? So by grabbing Okada early, they can influence the fan perception. They can protect his character, right? Because in WWE, like, let's face it, you know, he's not beating Cody Rhodes, right? None of these guys are beating Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes came in and he's beating Nakamura. He's beating all your heroes and people still like him. You know what I mean? Like, they cheer him over Nakamura. Whatever happened to that, by the way? But anyways, it is what it is, right? The money is not worth it. It's not going to pay dividends. And in my personal opinion, it's not going to move the needle either, right? What are you going to do after you have the matches? And then also, they also had like the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. So people have seen Okada, and they've seen him lose to like Daniel Bryan, I think, and to like Kenny Omega or Adam Page or somebody. Like, he lost. He's lost several times in AEW cards. So it's like, the fact that he's here now doesn't really change anything. And with that being said, go fuck yourselves.